There we go. Can you guys hear us now? Nice. There's a small crowd. Come on, where is everyone? Oh, well. Oh, they're all skiing. Okay, sounds good. So they're all closed by now. Well, thanks everyone for being here. This is our afternoon panel where we do this is kind of like forward-looking trends from a CISO standpoint, especially with regard to AI and a bunch of emerging threats. What are some other topics? They were talking about just advice for CISOs in general. And then, we did this panel last year, right? And it'll be interesting to kind of explore what things have changed since last year to now. So, at least from our perspective. So, thanks for being here. I'm Matt Hillary. I'm Drata CISO. I live in South Jordan. I can say South Jordan, not in Salt Lake City, because most of the time I'm talking with folks that are outside of Utah. And I just want to introduce the panel real quick. So, do you want to go around real quick? And then, as you do so, I was going to try something. Every night for dinner, so we've got 4 kiddos. It's pretty wild at dinner time, but the way we check up with our kids and everyone at the table is we'll ask, we call it high-low buffalo. And I don't know if you did this or anything. My wife, she's at school, she's a speech pathologist, and was like, hey, someone share a high from your day, someone share a low from your day, and then someone share something random from your day. And then it goes on from there. It's kind of fun to hear from our kids, and even thinking of my own, like, well, I've got like 15 lows. Maybe, no, it just depends on what the day is like. And so I wanted to ask you, high-low buffalo, with regard to, recent things. It could be, since last time we met where we talked about AI, like, hey, what's been a high with regard to your use of AI? What's been a low? What's been a, you choose. But in addition to your introduction, if you'd be willing to, it'd be great. I don't know, Mandy, you want to kick us off?
Oh, I have to go first.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Hi, I'm Mandy Andress, again, CISO at Elastic. I live in Austin, Texas. From a high, I would say just the progression on AI. It's gone from a lot of discussion of, oh, we should be doing something with this, and just more directives from a senior leadership to there's some actual work happening, going into production that is providing value to organizations. So we moved from the let's do AI just for AI's sake to we found things that are actually really impactful to the organization. A low would be, and I mentioned it earlier in my presentation, just some of the resistance that I'm seeing from security practitioners, not wanting to even just learn about it, try it out. And I think from a career perspective, that'll be pretty limiting for them over the next couple of years. So trying to help move that forward and doing so not just with folks I directly know, but also broader across the industry. In Buffalo, I live in Austin, and I came to Park City, and I didn't look at the weather before I traveled. So that blue coat is what I have, along with some gloves.
I think you mentioned that last night. You were like looking at, hey, should we go to dinner tonight, or should I go to dinner? And you're like, wait, there's snow. Oh, man, it's wild. Well, glad you can join us. I remember last year we were chatting. You're like, hey, how did you even hear about this conference? I see you're presenting. And you're like, I just want to go to a cool conference, and it was about AI, and it was in Utah where there's snow, or something, or ski, or something like that. And I thought, man, that is so cool. So we met, I think, last year at this conference. So thanks for coming back again this year and also being part of the panel. Brandon.
So, Brandon Greenwood, I am CISO with Beyond, based here in Salt Lake City. I live in Farmington. So it was high. What is the high? I think what's some of the highs since last year, kind of piggyback on what you said with, hey, we're just going to do AI to do AI. We're going to use it as, we're going to say, all right, who's going to win the game this weekend, right? Somebody betting, and they're using it for things like that, or just general chat assistance. And I think the use of, or the maybe more focus on AI agents, and I don't know if we're going to talk about that at all today or can work it in. I think the use of agents is becoming maybe even more of a game changer than just, and I think we're going to continue to go through these kind of iterative, okay, these are game changers. I mean, AI in general is just, it's definitely going to be the most transformative technology of my lifetime. And I was here for, a little bit of the early parts of the internet, but just the continued adaptation, and use of AI in the form of agents or otherwise. And I think as it applies to security, we're starting to see that with a lot of vendors, manufacturers working AI into their products and typically making them agents. Maybe we'll talk about some things that we have done with agents in our security program and how we have extended that to enablement with other functions within our organization. And the things that I would probably be the high-low buffalo, right? The low would be maybe too much dependence by some folks on AI. And what I mean by that is asking, an LLM a question and not really doing research or looking into whether or not what it's told you is factual. It might not be malicious in any way, but there might be pieces of it that you go and put that in a presentation to your board, and you're going to get some questions that you can't answer. So I think there's that dependence, not to say I've done it. I swear to God, I have not done this, but I know I have to believe it's been done. And just kind of, I'll tell you where I have used it and almost made some mistakes is contract analysis, or at least reviewing contracts with an LLM. And it will sometimes say, well, you should maybe add this or focus on this, and you go through the contract and review it, yourself, and it's already been addressed in some way. So I think there are still some challenges with that. So I think the overdependence is kind of a low that we're starting to see. And the Buffalo, I'm going to use something that's changed from when we met last, or something that I heard that I thought was kind of weird and kind of a Buffalo Bull BS, but it's true. I read an article end of last year where they were talking about AI, autonomous AI for societies, where I talk about have you heard of this? A transformative technology. There are discussions going on right now where they're saying, you know what, at some point in the future, AI could we could have a city basically run on AI, for example, or a country where AI is doing the policing, AI is doing banking, AI is doing policy enforcement. AI might be running the power generators, things like that. And it went so far as to kind of mention you might have citizens of a country or maybe a town or a city or whatever vote on an AI government. Now, I think this is way out there, but I thought it was super interesting. Now, whether you want to say Buffalo, yeah, it's a fake, or Buffalo, that would be cool. I don't know, but something definitely to kind of, I think, keep an eye on as far as interesting ways that AI might be used in the future.
That is super interesting. I am curious, as a follow-up question to that one, about the over-reliance. Do you see us eventually getting to a point where over-reliance is actually okay and where we want to go?
Putting the Nostradamus hat on, I think there will probably be a time where it will be. I think the more we get into more agentic AI and some of the capabilities I think that will bring, I do think there's probably going to be a time when that will, and it's going to be interesting to see what it does for, just creative thought. Because what I would worry about there is, does that go away? Is AI, we don't have to think about anything. We don't have to look at or read that contract. We just let the AI do it. It does a better job than we do, and we just say, all right, I'm just going to sit here, eat the bonbons, watch Married with Children, let the AI do its thing. So,
love that response.
Nobody knows Married with Children in here.
Yeah, we do.
That's awesome, man. Thanks, Brandon. Adam.
Hi, I'm Adam Marré. I'm the CISO of Arctic Wolf. Our office in Utah is down in Pleasant Grove. I live in Provo. That's where I'm from. We're headquartered out of Minnesota, but our largest security operations center is in Pleasant Grove. So, and actually just got the news today, we're actually expanding our office, which is really exciting, which means there's going to be more positions for people. So if you know younger people looking to get into cybersecurity, we have a great pipeline, so reach out to me. Let's see, so high, low, Buffalo. So the high with AI is I am really excited about what we are doing with AI. We actually early on hired a whole ML AI team at Arctic Wolf. We knew what we were sitting on as far as information. We just have, we have 1 trillion observations coming into our system a day, which means, like 1 trillion log lines. It's amazing. And then all of that's essentially trained by humans because we look through it. We use our old ML that we've had. We look through it, and we have results. And so it's an incredible data set for training. And I was super skeptical when we hired an AI team that this would turn into anything. In fact, people are making fun of me now because I was so skeptical. But the tools that we're going to have, now these won't be commercial. They're just for our internal use in our SOC is pretty incredible. So I'm really excited about that. We'll be able to start showing some of our customers some of that as it rolls out. Really excited about that. We are looking at doing some offerings for the public, but what we're using internally is really quite exciting to assist our operators in their work, make them a lot more efficient, a lot more fast at going through the data that they have to look through. So really excited about that. My low is, we were talking about this last year, and we were starting to look at it, but we, at Arctic Wolf, obviously, we have 10,000 customers, so if there's an attack out there, we see it, and AI is coming. It's here. The attackers are using it They're integrating it into their processes of the way they attack, and they're getting better and better. So that is a low. I mean, the high is we're using it, the low is they're using it. And then Buffalo is, I don't know if you guys saw, but Microsoft recently released some research that the use of AI is making their coders dumber. Especially their short-term reasoning skills, like you're just looking at the problem, you're trying to reason through it, they're getting dumber because everybody's just dumping that into Copilot or whatever they're using. It's spitting out the answers, they don't have to think about it. So those baseline reasoning skills are getting dumber. I encourage you to go look at that research. Now, for 12 years, I have been a guy going around talking about the damage, the unmitigated damage that social media is doing to our society and mainly to our young people and their mental health. And I only bring that up to say, when I started doing that 12 years ago, everybody was looking at me like I was insane. And now, of course, everyone's like, oh yeah, social media is bad for your mental health. We all know this, as if it's just like accepted knowledge. But I was the one screaming into the wind for a long time. And now I'm seeing this with AI. We made the mistake with social media. Without regulating it, we just let everybody use it, including our kids, and it's caused horrific damage. I am really worried about what we're doing with AI. Again, totally unmitigated, and we're just letting everybody use it, and the effect this is going to have on each and every one of us in our society. I am very concerned about that, and I don't think anybody knows the answer to that. So sorry to bum everyone out, but that's my Buffalo.
I'm so grateful you shared that. I think that's awesome insight. The reason I was laughing at that, anyone see the show Idiocracy? Right? It's kind of like a show for the time, seems like. But it seems like it's an alternate ending with that, which is AI is making us dumber, not all the other stuff as far as like not having a good kind of, way to continue to project humanity in the right direction. But I was on a panel a couple of weeks ago, I used that same term because we're talking about auditors. I'm like, hey, what about assessors? Can assessors use agentic AI capabilities to then facilitate an assessment? And then what about internal GRC teams also using these capabilities to help? And then you just bot against bot, and they do the audit, and then you're like, hey, escalate to the humans if anything comes out. And I was like, are we becoming dumber as a result of this? And he's like, Matt, I wouldn't use the term dumber. He sounded offensive. And I was like, I would use the term de-skilled. I was like, so we can start using the term, we'll become more de-skilled over time. So I like that insight. For me, I'm really loving the amount of acceleration as a result of using a large language model. It's super capable. Like, I think back in December, I got asked to put together some, what was it? Letters of recommendation in general, right? I was like, hey, here's this person's LinkedIn. These are some things that they've done. These are some things that I'm personally proud of this individual that they've done. I would like you to write basically something in my wording recommending this person at whatever it may be. And so it gave me a first draft that was fantastic. And I was like, cool, like this person wants to apply to I think it was like 10 different places. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So how do I change these things up? But it actually was a great first draft to really start and move from. That was actually mostly in my voice, but I went through quite a bit to change it because I'm very particular about what things I want said and how. So that was, I think, one of the highs this last year for me, and continuing to use that as a way to really kind of tone things down, or in a way that makes sense. I think the low for me is the rage against that machine. I was actually telling others I forgot to wear my rage against the machine learning shirt. That's like the typical rage font that you see on those shirts, because there are some times that I'll rage at it, be like, that is not the right answer. I'm so frustrated to even try this. And you can't even change the direction of the conversation to go into any material way, the right way you want it to go. So that was kind of a low for me, and I think hopefully it gets better over time. The Buffalo for me was my 11-year-old Noah. He is the person in our family that asks the most questions. It could be literally about anything. And I'll be in the car and be like, hey, Matt, why did this team member on RSL move over to this team? And how much do they pay? Why did they do this? Or why do they even transact between different soccer teams? And like, he will ask N number of questions. It could be up to 20 to 30. My wife and I were actually capturing all of his questions that he had asked us over time just to see and share with them in the future, to be like, you used to ask a ton of questions and you still do. Well, I have now outsourced that to ChatGPT, and so in the car, he'd be like, hey, he had a bunch of questions about military things. He's like, wait, why is this one the fastest jet? Or is there a faster jet? And he would just continue to go, and I'm like, this is great. Like, we've totally outsourced the question things, but hopefully it doesn't make him dumber as a result, Adam, and hopefully it allows him to continue to gain the knowledge that he's looking for. So that's been my Buffalo this last year. De-skilled, yes, thank you. So, well, let's talk. Thank you for sharing that. It was great, and entertaining my high-low Buffalo idea there, and it's good to hear from your thoughts there, especially, looking last year to this year, and hopefully next year we get the opportunity to share too, hey, what's happening over the next 12 months. And speaking of the next 12 months, and Adam, I was going to ask you, just in general, even just moving out from the AI-specific topic, any emerging threats that you're seeing, any threat vectors that are keeping you up at night, and then what are you personally doing to proactively kind of protect against those?
Yeah, really good question. again, I'm really lucky to be in the position I am because with, again, those 10,000 customers, our SOC, and then our incident response team, which does hundreds of cases a year, we have really good threat intelligence. And, I get to see it at the baseline level and then the produced products that we release. So some of those insights come out there can really lead what we look at and what we're scared about, what we're concerned about. And but the bottom line, the story is that from what we can see is that it's not changing a whole lot. Over half of the successful breaches are still a result of, or still ransomware and BEC. Basically, people are looking for money and they're getting money. And then any direct intrusions are almost all because of external facing VPNs or RDP, remote control, things like that. And then most of the way they're getting into that is phishing or previously compromised credentials. I know I'm just telling you stuff but I'm telling you, this is really what's happening. So yes, everybody is afraid of the scary, sexy 0 days, but that is not what's affecting companies every single day. It's the bread and butter stuff. And when we talk about vulnerabilities that are being exploited successfully, I forget what it is, but over 80%, almost 90% of the exploited vulnerabilities, there's 10. There's 10 that are used. So if you patch those 10 or don't have them, your chances of being exploited go diminished to like the single percentage points. So that's what we actually see out there. And one of the things we are seeing are the phishing and the social engineering that attackers are doing is getting better because they are using these LLMs that are practically free. So the idea of I can just look at bad languages and bad logos is kind of going away. I think it's going to be even more diminished next year. But one thing that is interesting is the number of discovered vulnerabilities is increasing every year. 10 years ago, it was 6,500 a year. CVEs announced. This year's over 40,000. Last year it was just under 30,000. So it's increasing, and that's another use of AI, I think, that attackers are using. They're using AI to say, find me the vulnerabilities in this code, find me the vulnerabilities, against this target. That's one of the reasons we think it's increasing, although it's hard for us to know. We can just see the numbers going up. And the number of criticals has gone from, double digits to hundreds to last year, and this year is about 5,100 critical 0 days. Or critical CVEs that were announced. So we're just seeing this increase, and I think it's only going to go up. But again, if you patch 10 things, your chances of being breached go way down, and if you protect credentials. So now I'm kind of going through what probably most of you in the room already know, but I guess I'm validating that it is true. The things you need to protect against are the same things, the bread and butter that we need to protect against. You need to protect against social engineering, so phishing-resistant MFA is really important. Prioritized patching and vulnerability management is really important. And making sure you have good processes for transferring money is really important because that's what BEC goes after. And if you do those things, the chances of you being harmed, at least in a financial way, go way, way down. And so that's what we're looking at. And then what are we looking at in the future? Well, it's what we've been talking about in the conference. It's AI, and it's attackers using that, 1, to find vulnerabilities, 2, to create exploits for those vulnerabilities, and 3, to execute them. So we had a huge sea change when we went from single groups doing ransomware where they had to do everything from initial access to the ransomware code to the negotiation. And of course, the big change was ransomware as a service, where now you with 0 skills can go and you can pay someone to get you access, you can pay someone to get the ransomware code, and then you can pay someone to negotiate for you. You can do all of that, and you don't have to have any skills. Just pay someone to do all that. And I think AI is going to be the next step to people with low skill being able to do high skill breaches, high skill intrusions that are going to be successful. And obviously on the defensive side, we've got to use AI against them. Like you said, bots against bots, but not for compliance, for actual attacks.
I love that. A lot in that answer. A couple things stood out to me was, I love that you prescribed, hey, there's like 10 things you can do, and that will immediately, hopefully, risk reduce a ton. Focus on, obviously, the social engineering aspect. Seems like the human aspect of things are going to be interesting. Last year, you shared a experience where someone effectively social engineered you over the phone, right? Where they were like, hey, I have your son here, it's some kind of ransom of some sort. It was pretty scary, right? I know we actually had someone show up this a couple weeks ago, was like, hey, I need to do a password reset. And our IT team member was like, hey, we got to get on a Zoom call and we got to verify your identity. The person requesting the password reset did not look like the identity or picture that we had, and led to a bunch of other issues that were happening with this individual. But in that essence, it was like, well, what if this person was like AI generated and they were based off the human that they should have been representing for that password reset? I think it would have been a different outcome for us. But it's kind of scary to see that as well. So do you feel frustrated that we're still having to address these same fundamental issues? Like vulnerability management, the patching stuff, all that stuff. Like, it's just organic follow-up question there. Is the tone or is this same beast that we're trying to attack not changing? Is that frustrating to you as leaders? Any thoughts on that front? Or do you feel like, hey, it's a good challenge, it's going to keep us busy for the next N number of years?
I'll chime in real quick. It does frustrate me a little bit. I think, when you're looking at blocking and tackling like CIS 18, I think that there's the Australian directive, whatever that is, where you hit the top 5 of those and you dramatically decrease your likelihood of being attacked. So frameworks like that, I think we've lost sight of that. I think everybody right now is kind of looking at what's the new sexy. What are our manufacturers doing that is going to make sure that I don't get attacked by this esoteric, vulnerability that I may or may not have in my environment, rather than focusing on, like, again, blocking and tackling. So you get asset management right, you get patch management, and you got to have the asset management right first, right? You just look at the top 3 things: asset management, patching, and then make sure that your role-based access is set up correctly. Administrative rights, privileges like that. So that's something that I agree with what Adam is saying, in that, hey, these are the vulnerabilities or things that if you patch or figure out, you're going to reduce the likelihood of an event. But also, if you take some of the basics, the core, the foundation to your security program, and do them perfectly, and then get to the sexy stuff a little bit later, I think you set yourself much further ahead of the buddy next to you who's not going to outrun the bear.
I would just add to that, the incentives are not aligned. Push to do things as fast as possible, get things out to a specific date, specific budget, and then you have to back into addressing whatever it's operational issues, security issues, and pushing from that perspective. And on your nothing sexy, it's fundamentals are boring, and people don't want to do boring. And if there's a way that we can make that better, and investments in legacy technology, which allow us or force us to do workarounds and try to secure things that we can't secure directly, all of that together is things that I think we can fix if we want to, but incentives aren't there to really push us to do it.
I used to rage when we'd find something that I'd be like, hey, this is fundamental. Like, why is this still a problem to the organization? Or it'd be really critical and overly critical and painful. Now it's actually turned to a celebration of like, oh my gosh, we just turned over this rock. And there are so many different things under this rock that we need to fix now. It's great that we found it. Now we got to go fix it. We dug into, I think, one of our SaaS providers yesterday or the day before was like, oh, there's a lot of good things in here we need to fix and improve. It's totally changed that tone. And that part of the fundamental foundational element is actually still exciting to be able to find something to be like, cool, we are fundamentally improving this organization at that level.
I'm just going to jump on something real quick right there. So we're getting ready. When is this video going out? All right. If my security team is watching, you close your ears. We're about ready to go through a pen test, internal pen test. They don't know, right? So as part of that, one of the things that I told the firms that we were looking at is, I've got it listed in the statement of, in the RFP, make us look bad. Like, it used to be such I see a confused look there. It used to be, I did not want to get compromised. It was like, shit, if something happens here, I'm going to get fired, boss is going to be pissed. I have very much changed over the years to tell us turn over the rocks, because if we don't know about them, we can't fix them. And as we have undergone some of these efforts and people have made us look bad, we have gotten better as a program, and I think if you look at most mature organizations, they're kind of doing the same thing. So yeah, make me look bad is probably a little strong, but it gets the message across.
I love the things they find in those because they really do validate your projection that you're trying to go for that next year for the things you want to actually have done. It's also validating to say, hey, this actually is a bigger issue than we're probably maybe invalidating it to be. And it's almost celebratory. Like, hey, send it over. Like, this is awesome. You got in. Like, I'm glad. Like, hey, what do we need to fix here? So. Cool. Now, double-clicking on AI-related threats, Mandy, I wanted to ask you, incredible presentation earlier. Always love learning from you and the things you share either on panels and presentations. Specific to AI-based threats, what are some things that you're seeing now that are most concerning to you, and any protection mechanisms you would recommend to us with regard to that?
For me, what I'm seeing today that's most effective is just applying AI to phishing messages. And it's hard to detect. Very hard to detect. They're very specialized. They're very focused to where it's almost impossible for most users to identify if something's a phishing message or not. And I think that's just going to get more challenging. And I'm not sure what the resolution is, other than maybe some more deepfake detection and security tools for email. So if someone wants to solve all that, that would be awesome. But I think it's applying AI to social engineering where I think we're going to see the next, because we can fix all the technology issues, but we can't fix the underlying human behaviors. And it's how can we work with human behaviors to build skills versus what I think security's tried to do traditionally, which is try to change underlying human behavior, which is impossible. And for me, that's the biggest area.
It is frustrating the human element still becomes the biggest challenge for us in trying to continue to provide that awareness. New phishing, we actually adopted, I think, a phishing email box where people can send it to phishing at, and then we have AI capabilities in there that will actually look at it. Yeah, actually, good catch. This was part of our phishing simulation. Or, this one actually looks legitimate. You're okay. That's actually helped take off some of the burden of the security operations team that would usually respond to those and have to do the validation. So that's been helpful. But you're right. Sometimes those don't get to that email box, and sometimes they're already compromised by that point. It's like, super frustrating and challenging. I wanted to pivot over to AI supply chain risks. So on this front, many of us are considering obviously the use of AI either in our platforms or by our people internally. I'm curious what you're doing to vet those providers today. Is anything you'd recommend to the group as far as how we should adequately vet them to feel like, hey, they are safe for our people to use or safe for our platform to incorporate so our customers also feel okay with our use of it? On that front, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, that one, so we started internally, we have an AI review board that's reviewing everything that's coming in from an AI request perspective, whether it's note takers or any kind of more enterprise tools. The challenge that we're finding is now everything is AI, and so we're morphing it to AI-specific reviews. It's just part of our traditional and standard vendor review, and trying to differentiate or help understand from a legal and compliance perspective what's AI that needs AI in the big AI sense versus what's AI and just a tool we already exist is incorporating some AI technology on the back end to either speed up their processes or provide us some deeper insight and analytics on what we're doing from them. And I think it's going to get harder and harder to where if you're still trying to differentiate, it'll get more into, I think, what building models versus running AI. And I think we'll have some macro areas that we'll focus on. But that's an education and a learning experience for a lot of organizations that we'll have to go through.
Oh, I love that. Brandon, I know you have a supply chain of third, fourth, fifth, and N number of parties there. How are you vetting those, and what's your approach?
So obviously, third-party risk management is a big piece of it. There are some frameworks out there that can kind of help with this as well, and how you can leverage AI. It's maybe more holistic than just supply chain. Trying to think, I think one is Atlas. What is it? Atlas. It's MITRE's Atlas AI, and then there's NIST's AI. I think it's RMF. Yeah. So those are really good kind of documents that can help build a program or help you with governance. But I think there's also, when we're putting these things together and we're using AI maybe to ask the questions or review the answers that come back to kind of help our analysts or the GRC teams who might be responsible for either reviewing the answers or sending those responses out. I think there's a lot of use where AI could come in and help with that. Again, we don't want to be de-skilled. I'm going to keep going there. But there are some benefits in being able to do that. And I think what we should also be able to do is test, whether or not those programs are working for us. And I don't know if I remember, I vaguely, I spoke last year about and mentioned White Rabbit Neo. Who is familiar with White Rabbit Neo, kind of what that is? A couple people. So essentially what White Rabbit Neo is it is mainly seen or kind of communicated as a tool to help threat actors or people who, red teamers, we'll go there, red teamers devise ways to compromise a system or an environment. Pen test firm, maybe they're going to use White Rabbit Neo to kind of come in and say, oh, they're using these technologies. Let me see if I can chain together some type of an attack. And I think what we need to do, and we've started to kind of do this, is use tools like a White Rabbit Neo to test against those controls. So specific for supply chain, if we've got some controls in place to make sure that we sell product, right? We sell product online, patio sets. Are the folks who, yeah, we're not saving the world with protecting people's companies with security. No, we're selling patio sets. I love you guys. But testing our controls and our incident response plans as part of that. If something goes wrong in supply chain, or we have a partner who does something, maybe uploads a product at a bad price, or bad, there are some people who are just bad actors. How can we go in and can we test some of these controls, and can tools like that not only help the bad guys or the red teams come up with ways to test and evaluate whether controls are correct or they're working, but how do we as defenders do the same thing from an incident response perspective? So going in and basically saying, all right, I have this partner who's doing this, what are the damage they could do, and do I have the controls in place to identify that before it happens or hits production, because reactive is always worse. We want to be as proactive as we can about that. So those are just some of the things that we're doing and exploring.
I just want to say your patio sets often have a significant impact on a person's mental health. So that's not just
We're awesome. Thank you.
Super, super good insight there for both of you. I think the AI review board sounds like a really good practice as well as, hey, is this a good way of going forward with this? And obviously continue to test and validate that. Right? That's the part that I think will never go away with regard to the advent of agentic AI or any type of AI models that are capable out there. I don't think it's ever going to get to a point where we're going to either fully over-rely or rely, or to the point where we don't need to validate what's happening as a result. So, love that. On my end, I was going to move to the next question about GRC for AI and AI for GRC. Different directions there. So just starting with GRC for AI. I know you mentioned a couple, right? NIST AI RMF is another one that came out last year. We got the EU AI Act. We've got, I think, a hot one this year that many organizations are looking at. If you are using AI within your platform, is ISO 42001. That's one I know that's on the docket of many SaaS providers this year. So if you have a chance to read it and then incorporate it, it is an information security management system, just like ISO 27001. It has its list of controls. It has a really good way of approaching how your company incorporates AI within your platform in a really standardized, risk-based way. So we're definitely looking at that part. As far as the side of AI for GRC, this is where it's gotten really exciting. I mean, once we got our hands on, ChatGPT, it's like the ability to ask questions to get responses back. We're doing that between companies right now with security questionnaires. Brandon, you mentioned that, like, hey, let's ask our 400 questions in addition to asking for all the other artifacts to, vet a third party. It's been incredible to be able to see you take the artifacts you'd usually provide to customers and then take not only that, but the prior times that you've answered those 400 plus questions, and then use that to then feed a capable model to then answer future questions that come across the line. And that's actually been super helpful for us. We're a super lean GRC team. When these questions come to our team, it's like, oh man, but we're able to pipe it through a capability that's able to populate those. Yes, I still need to validate those. In fact, when I talked about my low earlier, raging against the machine learning was a result of looking at some of those answers and being like, no, the answer is no. The answer is not yes. And it's just really frustrating as part of getting to a point where we can feel confident in those answers, but it is saving a ton of time on that front. On the opposite side of that coin, like you said, summarizing, and I don't know how many of you have gone through a SOC 2 report and scrolled through the hundreds of pages looking for exceptions noted, and then the result of that exception, and then the management response at the bottom, and to see if there's a qualification of that SOC 2 report at the top. Doing that as a human sometimes can take 5 to 15 minutes, maybe longer, depending on the length of the report. And it's just frustrating. It's like, so again, pipe it through a capable model that actually can then summarize and look for those call outs, especially with the questionnaire responses. I know in the past I've had to answer a question like, do you do this? And we say, yes, we do this, and except in this part of our infrastructure where we're not yet there. And so again, training a capable model to find out those exclusions or things that might be caught by a human reviewing the responses to those questions has been helpful in saving us time. And parsing through the question responses to find anything that might be a call out has been a big time save for the team. Another one has been, obviously with the continued addition of new revisions to various frameworks that are coming out, or new frameworks completely, or even regulations, being able to pipe that through, again, capable model to then summarize, hey, we are at ISO 27001 today. What are the net deltas to incorporate as part of this new revision to our program that we should implement today? And then give us a very bulleted list that we can then validate against the standard to say, yeah, this is the right way to go. That's been helpful in up-leveling my team and even myself, like staying on top of what these things mean for our company and how we incorporate those pieces. Last but not least, this was actually really fun. So I know with some of the capabilities that are out there today, I don't have a full understanding of tech. Like Drata is one of the fastest growing companies out there. And as a result, we are putting out code we're deploying code a ton. And so things changed. In our use of third parties, we obviously disclose the sub-processors and stuff like that. But at the same time, it is unreasonable for someone like me to always stay on top of how we're doing specific things within our code base. But we have capabilities that are basically integrated to then I can ask questions and say, hey, where in our code do we do this? Or what do we do here? Or what data do we provide to this sub-processor so that I can keep our data map up to date? It's been phenomenal this week to be able to go through and say, hey, we use this sub-processor, but how? And then we'll say, here are the code snippets that is calling or sending stuff to this particular sub-processor. And these are the data elements that are being sent to that in the very technical, give me an example like that we're actually sending to this third party. And I'm like, cool, it looks like we're sending email, we're sending this, we're sending that. Now I can have a data map that I can adequately defend to anyone asks what data are going to our third parties. So that has helped me kind of stay on board with how fast this company is going and trying to stay on top of things that we need to make sure are accurate on our website. Because I think transparency breeds trust between organizations, and part of that transparency is being accurate in your responses and how you're basically demonstrating or showing what your state of your company is. And so I want to make sure we're in the realm of integrity with all of those things. And so it's been helpful to have those capabilities help me. So that's GRC for AI and AI for GRC. Adam.
Can I jump in?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
On the AI for GRC on your SOC 2, one of the things that I've found very powerful is using AI and LLMs to find the negative in SOC 2 reports. We're really good at reading and responding to what we see, but if there's controls that your organization wants that aren't highlighted or called out or in place at your third parties, you don't recognize that very easily. But I've had some LLMs that flow that through, and sometimes it's interesting what's missing that just isn't highlighted in any reports.
I love that point. I didn't think about that. I'm definitely going to start looking at that as well, because sometimes they'll have like those complementary end user controls, and you're like, wait, I assume you do this, but assuming ends up getting us both in trouble, and so it's like, how do we make sure it's right? That's a really, really good point. Adam, you've been quiet over there, and I love hearing from your thoughts. So I want to ask about this next one about, you talked about earlier defending, right? Like threat detection, incident response, reducing human error. You mentioned the amount of data that flow into your systems to the point of hopefully getting to a point where we can have trusted agentic SOC analysts or capabilities to respond and detect. What thoughts do you have on that point? How are you using, is that going to happen more capably this next year from what you're seeing? What will help us out there?
Yeah, and real quick, I want to make a point on that GRC question. Is, I don't know if a lot of you, but GRC and our third-party risk, evaluating does provide some value, right? Provides quite a bit of value looking at this. I mean, it's not perfect, and everyone likes to say, oh, you can't know. But, I mean, it provides value of at least knowing, at least to some level, what the attested to controls and tested controls are at some of your vendors. But of course, we all have this downward pressure on doing that because it's very time consuming and expensive. So I am really excited for AI to come help solve that problem, because I'm already getting pressure to do it with fewer and fewer of our vendors just because of the expense. And I'm like, well, then we're not even getting that level of security. So this is a really difficult problem to solve. So I'm really excited about what AI is going to bring to it. As far as what we're seeing, so of course, a number of years ago, there was this whole push and dream that everyone had that SOCs were going to become fully automated, right? Fully automated security operations centers where all the responses, well, most of the responses were going to all be automated and it was going to be super efficient. And of course, what never happened, right? I actually think these agentic AI, evidence-based AI, and LLMs are going to help us actually get to a place where it's not going to be fully automatic, but it's going to be bionic. So you'll take your humans and you will plus them up to a level where they're either a lot faster or upskilled from what they are to be able to do, because they will be able to ask natural language questions that maybe have multiple steps to them, and the AI will be able to go do it, and it'll show its work. So they'll be able to go, they will have to have some level of skill because they'll have to be able to do quality control on that. Was the, is the SIM query that it wrote and ran, does it actually have the parameters? Is it actually looking at everything that I'm asking for? If I ask it a question like, tell me everywhere you see this IP address, or tell me everywhere you see IP address, from this area of the world, in my environment, what have they touched? And it can go do that much faster than a human can. So it's really just doing the same thing you are and then showing all its work. That is really exciting. And then even, looking at next steps and then being able to ask it to go do things, fix things, alert on something like that, is where, that's what we can see in the horizon next. And I mean like this year, next year. I've had demos from other companies do this. We're doing it internally, like I said. And it is going to make us much, much more efficient and better at what we're doing. And then you can extrapolate even further to models and agents that we'll be able to put inside our environments that will be looking for this actively and then be alerting you to be even better alerting systems than what we have now. Because basically we have now is sort of rule-based, or even some cases behavior-based alerting. Well, imagine if you have, actual smart technology out there, actual models that are looking for this and really understand it at a deeper level, and then they'll be able to alert you with much more fidelity and much more information. Not just, I saw this user do a weird thing, but I saw this user do a weird thing, and here's all of the context on what they did, and here's why I think it's weird, and then just present that to you, and then you can verify it. It's going to make us a lot better at defending. And yes, we're going to be a little behind the attackers, but I think when this comes roaring to the surface, and it's not just, Arctic Wolf that will be doing this, many companies will be doing this and offering these types of services, and when they start to become ubiquitous, I think our defenses are going to get a lot better.
I know we've been joking about the dumber and becoming more de-skilled. I think we're also getting kind of bored doing the same thing, right? Like, hey, I come to a new company, okay, we got to, have a centralized log store. Okay, we got to write these detections. Okay, we got to write these correlation searches. Okay, we got to have this incident response plan. Okay, we got to go. We're like, all right, like now I have capabilities that hopefully can take all of that off of our plates so that we can really be focused on the super interesting stuff that you mentioned. Like, give me all the context around, like I think Mincy mentioned earlier, like impossible traveler. It's like, hey, why is this important to me? You're like, hey, I know this because this person is split tunneling, and hey, it happened to go through this instead of that one, and cool, like, hey, Slack is over here, but this is over here, but no, that's actually a false positive, and now I'm, again, raging at that machine, right? And it's like, hey, what do we do here? But I think it's going to be exciting to finally, our brains that may be bored in this case might be more excited by some of the newer capabilities that are going to be existent is going to be there too, yeah?
Yeah, it's really exciting, but of course we got to remember the attackers are using it too. So we saw twice as many 0 days this year as last year. Last year was about 3% of effective intrusions using technical means. About 3% was 0 days. Most of it was vulnerabilities that we know about. Most of it is vulnerabilities that we know about or compromised credentials. It wasn't actual, new 0 days, 3%. This year, 6%. So it's doubled. And we have no other explanation other than we think that they're using AI to help them find these vulnerabilities. So they're going to get better. So we have to get better on our side. We have to get more efficient. To your point, not only are we getting bored, but we're inefficient at it. And Arctic Wolf had basically had a premise saying that we don't think you're going to be able to automate this way. You're going to need humans. And of course, the founders of the company made a bet on that, and the bet has worked off. But I don't think it's going to continue. We have to have AI help us defend against AI, bots against bots.
I love the bots against bots. I think I actually got that term from Bryce. If Bryce is in the room, he's like, hey, bot herder. He called himself a bot herder, I think once. Was like, hey, I've got this whole thing of it. It was great. And I was like, hey, that actually stuck pretty well. So, well, I know we're getting like 15 minutes left or so here, but I thought we'd move over to more like the CISO leadership stuff. Do you want to do that, or do you want to keep touching on AI? Do you want to do one more AI question? All right. Actually, one more on this one, if it's okay. Incident response prep, right? I know there's this whole thing, hey, can we be proactive and preventative versus reactive? What's the best way to do it? I think both, as far as like processes to help protect our companies. Obviously, we want to prevent things from happening, but also we need to be reactive. It was specific to, the attacks that are being used here that we're seeing that we just talked about. Anything specific to your incident response plans that you specifically updated as a result of these more sophisticated attacks?
Not specifically on the technical attacks. where I think a lot of companies need to put more focus in, and we've been working very closely with our legal and our PR and our crisis comms team, is what is that response once something happens, regardless of what that something is? And do you know who's going to be speaking to the press? Do you have standing statements that you have ready that you can use very quickly? Do you know who's going to make decisions to whether it's turn off services or things like that? And that's where we find a lot of impact to companies that have security events. We all have those companies in mind that we feel did it well and those that we feel did not do it very well. And regardless of what the underlying technical result or technical starting point is, how you respond from a more of a people perspective and a communication perspective, for me, I think has more impact than longer term than some of the technical components, at least the ones that are the more frequent types of events.
Now that's comforting to hear that the foundations of our IR plans are still the same, right? And the transparency around disclosure. I think there was a breach recently that happened. It was actually one of the SaaS providers we're looking at this week. Was like, oh man, were we even impacted? But I go to their website, I have all these other news articles about this breach that happened last week, right? And it's like, wait. We go to their website, it doesn't have anything there. And you're like, oh man, that's super frustrating. And so I like that you call that out to say just having that all prepared ahead of time so that when you do have an incident that happens, you're ready to go and be as transparent as possible to help, again, rectify that. We talked about emerging threats. We talked about the defense side of things. We talked about IR plans. Let's stay on AI, and then we'll jump to the other part. But Brandon, you have a big workforce there as far as people there. I know there's a spectrum of organizations that are adopting AI by their team members and just saying, hey, everyone just use it however you want to. Obviously, don't put company data into blah, 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 or whatever. Some guardrails, and there's some that are like, hey, we have some guardrails to kind of keep you from doing stupid stuff. De-skilled stuff. Or then we have other, they're like, dude, we do not use AI in our company at all. Where are you at your organization? And then how do you help protect or mitigate any of the risks that may be, potential of your team members or your employees at your company doing stuff using these capabilities inappropriately?
Yeah, so this is a really good question. So while I'm the CISO, I'm vice president over IT and security and some other things that don't really fit in there, like fraud prevention. So I've got a good-sized group. And what we have done, one of my teams has done, is we've said, all right, what are the things that are just a pain in the butt? Now, I went into this thinking, all right, is there any way that AI can kind of help us? And I flipped it. I was like, I don't want to be looking for problems for this solution. I want to find problems that maybe we can use automation, rage against the machine learning, AI, to address these things. So sat down, threw the spaghetti at the wall, saw what stick, came up with a bunch of different things that we said, all right, hey, if we could eliminate or make these things a lot easier, take the time it responds to this type of an event from 10 minutes down to a minute with some other technology, doesn't matter what it is. If we could do something, it's really going to allow us to be engineers. It's going to allow us to do other things. And what we ended up finding is that as we were putting this data set together and kind of scoring where we thought we were going to get the biggest bang for the buck, the team really kind of took off and adapted to really, we've got a machine learning, they don't report to me, but we've got a machine learning team and they do a lot of really good work. But and it was the security team I'm speaking about specifically here, we're able to look at some of the business problems in addition to our own a little bit differently than our ML team was, right? So the ML team sometimes a product goes to them and says, hey, we're looking at doing these things. What can we do to fix it? And I don't know that, they probably are. Like these teams are probably looking at other issues or problems in the environment saying, hey, maybe we can help here. But the security team started looking at this a little more holistically. And I think we've got other business units, some that report to me, some that don't, who have kind of used some of what we've done, what we've taken and said, all right, here's what we're doing, to the point now where we have, I think she's a merchandising group, a general manager over one of our divisions, who kind of put out a call to arms at a town hall. Hey, we've got this event, this bad actor thing happening, right? But it's from a merchandising perspective. So they started thinking about, all right, here's how we can make their lives better in addition to ours, focus on these things, do the things that are going to allow, with AI, ML, whatever, that we can push off to somebody so we've got more time to do the things that we really want. Getting back to the sexy stuff, let the AI do the kind of the grunt work, if you will. And we've really kind of found ourselves, in some ways, being kind of a leader in some of the spaces, I think, with delivering products and capabilities that, wait a minute, you hear, wait a minute, security? they were the ones who kind of came up with this. It wasn't our ML team or, and it's just a different way. It's not to say that, the team is better or anything like that. It's just a different way of thinking about things. And I'm sure that if some of my groups went to ML or some of our AI folks in the organization and said, we've got this problem, they would have a very unique or interesting way to do it that maybe we haven't thought of. So when you're talking about how are we using this, Brandon, you've got a big, large organization that reports up through you. I think there's a lot of enablement that even though parts of the organization that don't report up to me are still coming to some of these teams and saying, hey, can you help us with this? Can you do these things? And these teams being able, because security, let's be honest, most of the time we're kind of considered a cost center, right? Legal, shared services, those types of things. And these teams have really started to kind of take to this and now look for business problems where they can kind of get some of those kudos from somebody other than me and my boss. So I don't know if that really answers the question, but it is something that, and this has just been really fairly recently, that whether it's in this job, the next one, or the one after it, this is something I'm really going to push for, is not just having one team do it, but trying to build the skill set and the competencies into more than one team, right? So again, I don't know if that really answers the question, but it is something that we have found a lot of value in. So that if you have a team or you're on a team where you want to do this a little bit more, see what you can do outside of maybe your discipline that could help the organization and going from a cost center to a revenue driver or enabler.
I love that your team was seen as a pioneer or a driver of that, an enabler of that. I know we have one of our, I think, values of our organization is automation first. Pretty sure this could be automation/AI first for many of our organizations. And so very bullish on the use of it, right? And then obviously guiding others to do that. And I like that you mentioned kind of the idea of, hey, instead of being centralized, maybe democratizing that usage throughout in a good way to help make sure everyone's confident, almost like security awareness when it's done well, is like very much aware of how to use it well. So.
I failed to answer how are we securing it. I think, when we talked about the, I lost it again, the MITRE Atlas AI and RMF, those are really good frameworks or foundations. Applying them, having things like DLP, obviously policies, right? You want to have at least some teeth behind those policies as well. Can you do things to maybe enforce from a software web gateway or a secure web gateway, things like that, where you could say, all right, these are the AIs we want to use. Here's how we are going to audit them, and trust but verify is really what a lot of our practice has been. We don't want to say no, it's more of a yes, here's how.
Thanks, Brandon. I wanted to shift gears to talk about CISO evolution over the last probably 10 years or so. I started out about 10 years ago on my own personal journey of becoming a security leader. It's been pretty rocky, crazy, and obviously very insightful. And trying to figure out, hey, how do we do this role? It's been changing, and every company's different, and the role's different, and how you engage with others is different. It's been wild to see that change. Originally, it was very technical, and then it kind of morphed into more of a business acumen needed to basically present risks and to influence others. I think one person said it well. It's like, Matt, once you lose your influence in that role, you cannot be the security leader you need to be. It was very helpful to hear some feedback like that. And so I'm curious, the panel, starting with Mandy, if you'd be willing to, last year you gave a great talk on, at this conference around communicating risk, but also around CISO shifting from, and you shared with the group, the CISO mind map, which was for a brain like mine, it was great to be able to see the hundreds of different things we need to be responsible for and be like, hey, this is great, I love it, but it's also overwhelming and also pretty crazy some days and also the point of burnout. But you also mentioned, hey, that shift from very technical acumen to a very business acumen. And so I wanted to ask you, what skills or area of focus do you believe that CISOs must develop to thrive in this role?
I think the one that I've been working on the most over the past year or so is getting, as CISO, we talk about business acumen and how can security help the business be successful. But the next step beyond that is really thinking and acting like a company executive, to where your focus is not just security, it's the broader organization, and sharing your thoughts and your ideas on things that aren't security related. I always come in as I'm the CISO, I'm seen as the security SME at the leadership level and focus on that. But no, the expectations now are you're helping and you're contributing to the whole business, and whether that's product feedback, whether that's ideas or random information that you feel the CFO might find informative, or just sharing your opinion on something to the CEO, and just getting into that mindset to where I'm not just security and a broader business executive has been something that I've struggled with recently, and I'm trying to get my head out of just being the security-focused person.
And super, super insightful. I couldn't say it better. The whole like shift from being a seen as a person at the seat of the table, where they're talking about like, hey, customer success experience and how to improve that, and you have an opinion. I love that you're saying, hey, I don't want to be seen as just a security person or IT person. I want to be able to contribute to how we can have a better experience for our customers, or whatever that may be.
Yeah, I struggle with that because it's, there's experts in the space, and I know absolutely nothing about your space. So, who am I to comment that I think the decisions or the path that you're taking are the right ones? Because as a security expert, I don't always like when someone's just sitting there going, well, that's not right. Well, why do you feel that that's not right? Oh, because, so-and-so that I talked to over here that I met at a networking event told me that their company's not doing it that way. And it's finding that balance of what's just asking probing questions and trying to drive the conversation versus calling out someone or at least highlighting that lack of knowledge.
I love that you're owning that seat at the table. That's really, really cool. Now, Brandon, I forget now how many years you've been in this role, but you've led security at your organization for a long time. And so as you've seen, looking today versus however many years ago you started in your role, how has it changed for you, and what things would you suggest to the group here that might be aspiring to that particular role?
I would piggyback. Everything that Mandy just said is, in Brandon's opinion, 100% accurate. Anytime that you can, kind of ties into what I just mentioned, speak the language of the business. And the language of the business is dollars, right? It's not how many attacks did we stop today. It's not how many systems did we fix. It's not what was the site uptime and availability. Those are all things that we need. But from a leader, whether it's a CISO, a director, if you're accountable or just responsible for the security program, being able to speak. Other EVPs or other executives are never going to speak our language. Just full stop. Every other executive, EVP, VP, C-level executive, they're all talking the same language. They're talking about how do we increase revenue? How do we avoid these risks? What does our risk appetite look like? It is a similar conversation, but the vocabulary is a little bit different. And that also creates some challenges. Because when we talk about operations on the technology side, technology operations. When the business is talking about operations on their side, it's generally something different. So making sure that we're the ones adapting to we're speaking their language and communicating what we're doing in a way that they understand is something that I did not used to do when I started this journey. It is something that has been painful to kind of get to a spot where I still don't think I'm where I need to be. I will also say, a few years ago I had an opportunity to choose who I reported into, legal, CEO, board. I chose finance. I report into the CFO. And it was because we need to be, my belief is, we need to be better about speaking that language of the business.
Super, super insightful.
Can I
Yeah,
add one quick specific example? About midpoint in my career, where it is now, I took a role. I'd been leading larger and larger teams, and I took a role for 2 years that I was essentially a program manager, business program manager for a $50 million security rebuild efforts. I had all the accountability and zero responsibility. That 2-year period is where I grew and built all of my influencing skills, because I had to get everyone on board, but they didn't have to listen to me. So I learned a whole lot, and I always look back on just making that decision to get out of management for a couple of years made me that much better as a manager, as a leader, and really forced me to hone those skills.
It's been a fun journey, yeah. Awesome. Last but not least, Adam, we have a couple minutes left. Would you like to finish off with that question? And love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, sure. So most of the time when I'm talking to people who are aspiring to be a CISO, that's kind of the way I look at it. And I, first of all, agree with everything Mandy and Brandon said, 100%. We got to, but it's also not just speaking the language of business, because I think sometimes when we say that, there's an inference made there. And the inference is, all I care about right now is security. So all I got to do is learn how to speak business, and then I can get all the security things done. And that's not really what it is. You actually have to change your mindset, become an adult in the room, and understand that the business doesn't exist to be secure. And it's good to have that mindset when you're, further down in the org and you're just fighting the battles and getting it done, but you don't get to make perfect security when you become an executive. Your role is to help create that risk appetite, and then make sure that you're securing everything up into that risk appetite. But you should understand the budget well enough to know what should we be spending money on? What should we be sacrificing and maybe running the risk of? And then making sure you're reflecting that, making sure all the executives know the risk you're running. But you're not always saying we have to fix all the things, because if you were, you would literally be arguing for the company to go out of business. You know, just unplug everything, lock the doors, put cement over it, walk away. It's perfectly secure. But that's not the point. So when you're the CISO, you have to be the one in the room telling everybody we should do this, but right now that's all we should do. We shouldn't do more. You should be able to have that opinion and not always have people pushing back against you on security. That's what it is to really grow up and be the adult in the room when it comes to security. And it's really hard, because you want to say, I want to do all the things. I want to secure all the things. But you have to understand the budget well enough to say, this is what we should be spending on focusing our time and money on right now, and be clear about these risks and open about them and document them. Say we're running these risks and we all know it and we're all okay with it because we're focusing on these things today. And then tomorrow, as we get more revenue and we can have more budget, then we can do these things better. But you have to be that person, and you have to be able to come in that role. And when I tell some aspiring CISOs this, they look at me and they're like, I don't want to ever do that. I just want to be the security person. I'm like, great, then CISO's not for you. But there are lots of other great roles out there, principal architect, things like that are great for you, because then you can just have that motivation all the time and not have to worry about all the silly EBITDA and other business stuff that you don't want to care about, right? So you really have to grow into that role and understand the business and be a business leader. And I love it speaking up about other people's areas, because other executives aren't afraid to speak up about security. So you can be unafraid to speak up about customer success or marketing or whatever it is.
Super solid. 10 poker chips. Where do you want me to allocate these 10 poker chips this year, right? What do we do? And it really being that person of the art form of being able to allocate that appropriately. Adam, Brandon, Mandy, thanks so much for taking time today to do this. It's been awesome. I love learning from you. It was great to share the insights with the group here. I hope you all found this helpful. And that concludes this panel. So thanks, friends.
Thank you for moderating.
Of course.